What's up guys, it's your boy. Welcome back. I feel like I've been falling behind on this critique series, so I thought it'd be our catch up and do two back to back. In this episode we're going to look at a model sent in by Cancel 1600. It's a newer version of the classic Beholder Demon from the original Dungeons & Dragons game. It's nicely painted, but there's loads of little things that you could do to improve it. First off, let's get rid of that coin, it's a bit distracting. So the main problem is that... Angus. What? Onion. Pfft. Cheers. So as I was saying, the main problem is that you don't really get a sense of the rounded shape of the model, and that's because not enough attention has been given to bringing out the volumes. Volumes refer to the various basic shapes that the model is made from. It's really just a pretentious way to say shapes.
I painted the truth. I painted my truth.
As a miniature painter, it's your job to identify the kinds of shapes that you're working on and then apply your highlights and shadows in such a way as to emphasize them and bring them to life. The way you do that is by first realizing what basic geometric shape that the surface is, and then paint a highlight so that it matches that shape. So if your surface is round, you would paint a round highlight. If it's conical, you'd paint a triangular highlight. And if it's cylindrical, you'd paint a rectangular highlight, and so on. So if we look at the model, we can begin to pick out the various shapes on the surface. The main body is a sphere, and that's pretty obvious. The upper lip here is maybe not so obvious, but it's a cylinder. It's just a thin one. If you imagine you took a cylinder and cut a small slice out of it, it would still be a cylindrical shape, it's just a lot thinner than before. And it's the same with these little wrinkles above the lip. And again, the two details around the eye are also cylinders. They're just cylinders that have been bent a little bit. So now we know that the main body is a sphere and the various little wrinkles are cylinders. To highlight a sphere, we're going to place a round highlight on the surface directly underneath the light source. So for this example, we'll have a single light shining down from above, which would place our highlight here near the top of the sphere. To highlight a cylinder, the light is going to be running along the length, again directly below our light source. So because the light is directly above us, that would place the highlights here in the middle of the cylinders. Now if we apply that in the model, it's going to look like this. And you can see immediately that we now have a way more three-dimensional feel to the model. Colour wise, you'd simply mix an off-white that has a bit of yellow in it into the green to get your highlight. If you just use white to brighten the green, you run the risk of sucking all the colour out of your highlight and it will end up looking quite pasty, so it's better to use paint that has some yellow in it to help avoid that. Something like GW Dorn Yellow or Vallejo Ice Yellow would work really well. You could also just make your own by adding a bit of a bright yellow into some white. We'll apply that same principle to the tentacles. Notice that they're also cylinders, it's just that they've been bent around a bit, so you're still going to highlight them along the length, but only paint the areas that would be hit by the light from above. And that's going to look something like this. It's actually pretty amazing just how much of a difference that single highlight makes. Alright, so now that all the shapes have been clearly defined by the highlights, it's starting to look way more lifelike. To increase the realism, we can use a slightly brighter colour and add in some texture lines over the highlights. Seeing as it's meant to be skin, these little lines help to simulate imperfections in the surface to give more of an organic feel. For our shadows, we use a bit of a colour theory trick by using a complementary colour to shade the green. If you look on this colour wheel, you'll see that the colour directly opposite to lime green is pink. Colours directly opposite each other on the colour wheel are known as complementary colours. Now you wouldn't think that pink would make a good shadow for bright green, but actually it works really well. Just be sure to use a pink that's darker than your green tone. If you only have bright pinks at your disposal, mix a bit of black in to darken it down. Then you can simply glaze that into your shadows, so anywhere that wouldn't be catching the light, which is going to look like this. I find that using complementary colours in your shadow gives you a much more organic and realistic look. If you were to use a bright pink instead for this, it would look more like an OSL effect. So it still looks pretty cool, but it doesn't really read as a shadow. So if you're using this idea, make sure that the complementary colour is darker than your base colour. Next up, we're going to have a look at the gums. They look quite desaturated, so if we boost the saturation slightly, just by glazing over them with that pink from earlier, that will help to give them more of a fleshy look. And then we can run some sepia wash into the base of the teeth to make them look a bit less clean. The last thing we'll change is the eye. I think it's lacking some detailing right now, and that's leaving it looking quite flat. So what we'll do is mix some white into that blue colour of the iris and just add a bit of a highlight near the top. And then we'll mix some black into the blue and add a shadow near the bottom. That gives the iris more shape, making it look more rounded. The white highlight on the pupil is a nice idea, but the position of it reads a bit unnatural. A cool thing you can do is to have a couple of highlights, especially on an eye that size. Place one so that it overlaps both the pupil and the iris, and then add a secondary highlight on the pupil itself, a little smaller than the other one. Just make sure that you use a very bright white for this so that the highlight doesn't look dull. And then the last thing we're going to do is just glaze some of that dark pink from earlier into the bottom of the white part of the eye to help give it more of a rounded shape. Alright, so if we look at this side by side shot, you can see just how much of a difference adding a few highlights and shadows can make. When you're painting, try and think about the shape of the surfaces that you're actually working on. It's going to make a really big difference to your painting. Alright guys, so I hope you picked up a few things from this that you can use in your own paint jobs. I think a lot of the issues I went over here are things that most people struggle with, so I'm sure a fair bit of this will be relatable. And thank you very much for your support, and also thanks to Cansto for submitting the model for critique. Content helpful and you're interested in supporting its creation, you can do so by signing up to my Patreon feed for as little as $1 a month. Patrons get access to a private Discord server where you can get feedback on your work or just hang out and chat. You also get other benefits including early access to videos not available on YouTube, in-depth PDF guides, and occasionally the inclusion of your own work in videos like this one. If that's something you're interested in, click the Patreon link on screen to sign up now, and I'll see you on the Discord. Thanks again. Bye for now.